of our chart of vertebrate evolution, right? So we started out with our pre-vertebrate ancestor. Then from that, we gave rise to the conodonts and the ostracoderms. Conodonts went extinct. The ostracoderms gave rise to agnathans and gnathostomes. From our gnathostomes, we got our placoderms. And then placoderms gave rise to chondrichthyes and osteichthyes, our cartilaginous fish and our bony fish. And then I think we finished on Tuesday talking about the two groups that came from osteichthyes, which are our actinopterygians and our sarcopterygians. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the beginning of the chart, right? We're eventually gonna take this all the way to mammals. So on your chart that you're making, I would write pretty small if you wanted to all go mammals. Okay, so the actual chart, and y'all know I have pretty small handwriting myself, but this is eventually where we're going, right? We start out with a pre-vertebrate ancestor. Then down here at Anthracosaurs, which is the beginning of reptiles, I had to move up and continue my chart at the top of the
You have
page.
to memorize that whole thing for a test.
No way. That's like the one thing of this unit though, like this is all this unit is.
Literally, that's what this is.
What is it?
Well, guess what? Lots of things are annoying in life. Get over it. And that's not even all the detail. That's like the pared down version of that chart. So you're welcome. Okay. Don't. Can we hit the projector, please? Let me call roll and then start it. Josh, Piero, Joseph, Aaron, Grayson, Amari,
Here.
Nicole,
Here.
Sebastian,
Here.
Isa, Josh Lloyd, Juliana, Dina, Max, Lucas, Brittany, McKinnon, Nicole, Addie, Brady, Natalie, Luke, Robert,
Here.
Jay Dalton. All right, so I think that we left. I think we had just gotten to our representative groups of our osteopaths. All right, so let's take a couple minutes, copy this down, and then we're gonna get back to where we started, or where we left off with our actinopterygians and sarcopterygians. Stop.
Is that an H?
Didn't know, so it's an N, sorry, didn't know, and,
This is dolphins.
no, they're not even, they're fish. Sebastian, we're not having the walrus discussion. So that says did knowin, then really just, sorry, when I get the lower part of the board, my handwriting will get worse. I hope so. I really hope so. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's. I was telling Grayson that I had to make a bunch of Valentines for Sadie's infant class, because that's a thing, apparently. And I was like, well, I can't be the only one who doesn't do it, because then, I mean, it's already a mom guilt cereal. So this morning I was tying little hearts to little squeezy applesauce things for babies that said "You're awesome sauce, love Sadie." So that's my life now, guys.
How many started?
There are only eight babies in there, so you know it's not like it was a huge number, but I had to like cut out hearts, and I mean.
That was very awesome sauce.
They can, but they can eat applesauce, so, you know, you do whatever. But I looked on Pinterest and I was like, what is wrong with these people? They have so much time on their hands, like, this is ridiculous. Yeah, so that's Valentine's Day. Making applesauce. It doesn't bother me. I don't know who put it there. Probably somebody I threw a marker at. But, you know, you can say it. I'm good with it. It's all right with it. All right, are we ready to get back to notes? Okay, well, I'm not gonna erase it, Jadon, so it'll be here all day, or not all day, but for this evening.
You know what that did for us?
Bro, who else you gonna write it for?
Dude, you think I read it?
Your biology.
Sebastian, you've taken biology.
You don't remember nothing, no.
True, but I mean, I think you would remember like not doing that, but okay, whatever. Yeah, that's my Valentine's Day gift to you. It's not a lizard, it's an amphibian, but that's okay. That's what we're getting into. Okay, so,
What are you?
oh my God, they're reptiles, Sebastian, reptiles.
Dr. Howard, like a small.
I'm really starting to worry about your very basic understanding of life on Earth. Yes.
Me, Lucas, and Josh Reed is a fizzer.
What?
Look,
Officially.
It's a fizzer.
Okay, if we want to, that's cool. I'm cool with the fizzer. That's fine. A transitional species. Okay, so we left off here on Tuesday, and we were basically talking about these two different groups of bony fishes. All right, and the major difference between them, the key difference, is going to be the structure of the fin. Right.
Basil one.
So our actinopterygians are referred to as the ray-finned fishes, okay? And when you look at the bony structure underlying the fin, it's easy to see why we might call them that, right? They have a lot of small bones that fan out in a ray shape, right? With a covering of skin, integument, whatever, okay? And that's a very different bone structure from what we see in the sarcopterygians, right? Sarcopterygians have fewer bones, and they are stronger, capable of supporting more weight, right? So it makes sense that when we look at which of these two options might have made the stretch to colonize land, probably going to be the group of organisms that were better suited to move around on land, right? And when we move from the water to the land, we now have to deal with a new problem called gravity, right? We have to support our weight, and we have to distribute our weight in a way that it can be supported by our bones. Yes?
So those pictures on the side, are those the actin and the sarco, those
So
types?
sarcopterygians, no, so this is looking, so this is really small, which is my bad, but this says lobe fin fish. So actinopterygians are our ray fin fishes, sarcopterygians are our lobe fin fishes.
So when it says fin, that's like what looks like the feet there.
Yes, it's still technically a fin, right? Because it hasn't developed the digits on the end of that limb. So we're still calling them fins, they are still fish, okay? But we're looking at the group of fish that would give rise to early amphibians. Does that? So things get a little muddled here, especially as we get into these evolutionary transitions, because it's like, at what point do we stop calling it a fish and we start calling it an amphibian? So like, when we get here today and we start talking about our rhipidiscians, it's really important to remember, rhipidiscians are still fish, okay? okay? But they are the group of fish that gave rise to early amphibians. And the same thing will happen when we move from amphibians to the reptile transition, right? We're gonna talk about reptilomorphs, okay, which sound like a reptile, but it's actually still an amphibian, a group of amphibians that gave rise to reptiles, okay? So context is key here. So both of these groups, Actinopterygii and Sarcopterygii, are obviously still fish. With these lobe-finned fishes, this is where we see the evolution of tetrapods, right? The evolution of amphibians and the transition of life from just water to land, okay? So, questions about the ray versus the lobe fin. Everybody understand how the bone structure of that is kind of what determines who was going to kind of be able to have limbs and support their weight, and who maybe was not evolutionarily set up so well for that.
What's
Grayson.
that long yellow thing? What part of the fin is that?
So that would be the outer part of the fin that's furthest away from the body, the pelvic fin. So like this part.
It's their pink.
Yeah, you could say that, modified pinky. All right. So everybody good with that? Everybody understand the significance of those two groups? They both are still living, right? We still have tons of representatives from, well, I guess more from Actinopterygii. We do have some living Sarcopterygians, but what happened to the majority of the ones that are still living?
They're on.
They moved to land, right? So we don't see a ton of living Sarcopterygians, but these are both considered extant groups that are still existing. Okay, so we know that there was some group of ancestral Sarcopterygians, okay, that gave rise to 3 more distinct groups of fishes. We don't know exactly what it was. We have multiple like transitional fossils. But we can't pinpoint that ancestor, and in all likelihood it wasn't just a single species of fish, right? It was probably a group of Sarcopterygians that collectively evolved into these 3 groups, okay? And those groups are our Actinestians, our Dipnoans, and our Ripidicians. So we're going to talk about each one of those.
Is that why it's called that? I'm not trying to be dumb.
So those were named that for some of the earliest paleontological digs that took place in those areas, and then that era was named that, and it's called that collectively, no matter like whenever you dig to that level in the substrate, that's considered to be the Mississippi River. Is that a hint? Or?
I'm gonna say no. I mean, it wasn't.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so I just want you to know for this slide, obviously I want you to know that Sarcopterygians gave rise to these 3 groups. Again, there's some argument about exactly how that evolution occurred, but for what I want you to know, I want you to know that somehow these 3 groups, right, came from Sarcopterygians, okay? And one of these groups is particularly special because they were the group of fish we know gave rise to amphibians, okay? Because of a bunch of characteristics that Ripidician fossils have that we're going to talk about, okay, that make them land-worthy. Yes?
So on that diagram,
Yes, you could. Or don't put amphibians because Ripidicians aren't amphibians, they're fish. But they are the group of fish that gave rise to amphibians. Does that make sense? So again, this is when we have to, this is when the details get a little muddled. You've got to remember the Ripidician is a fish. It's classified taxonomically as a fish. But it is the group of fish and amphibians where it comes from. Okay? All right, so just talking briefly about each one of these groups, dipnoans, actinistians, and rhipidiscians. So oddly enough, we do have living examples of dipnoans and actinistians, but the group that actually gave rise to amphibians are extinct. We don't have any living examples of rhipidiscians, which is kind of annoying. Dacian, and do you pause and ask yourself, do I really want to ask this question?
I'm really curious.
Okay, pause again and ask yourself, is this directly relevant to what we're talking about? But not yes.
But like, are penguins mammals or birds?
Birds are mammals.
Oh my
Are
god.
birds not mammals?
No, they're birds.
Wait.
They're their own group. They're their own, okay, you know what, let's back up,
Birds have hairs and they have milk.
back up, a little bit. Okay, guys, when it comes to vertebrates, this is like basic life 101 knowledge that I really need you to know, okay? So vertebrates